Pirate, fusing Senju Hashirama power to dominate. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 1, 1516 in the sea calendar. No wind band. On a deserted island, central area, two people are standing opposite each other, looking at each other. Is the teacher going to fight with Luo Lei? Benz looked at the two people in the field with a shocked look on his face and couldn't help but sigh in amazement. Listen to Benz. Ein, who was on the side, couldn't help but nod his head, and a pair of beautiful eyes also fell on the two people in the field. I saw that one of them was tall and mighty, wearing a navy coat, his face was cold, and a wisp of determination was spreading between his eyebrows. Of course, what was more remarkable was the huge iron arm shredder he had in his hand. That's right, he was the supreme combat power of the former world government, the Admiralty General, known as the Black Wrist Zefa. 7 years ago, the trainee ship led by Zefa was attacked by pirates. Her right arm was also severely injured, and her beloved students were all killed except her and Ben's. Finally, naval scientists transformed Zefa's right arm into a robotic arm shredder equipped with sea floor stones to deal with those with ability. As for the opposite side of Zefa, there stood a handsome young man with short silver hair. His name was Luo, and he was a distant nephew of Teacher Zefa. 2 years ago, during the recuperation of Teacher Zefa's injury, his hometown encountered a natural disaster and came to run to Teacher Zefa. As a result, in just 2 years, he let I know what a real genius is, what is a proud son of heaven, and what is a real monster. Almost, after a few seconds, Zefa stretched his loins, smiled at Luo Lei, and said, "Let me see how much you stinky boy has grown." Well, armed color domineering winding. Luo Lei gathered all the emotions of the hippie smiley face, clenched his fists, and a wisp of pitch-black armed domineering energy wrapped around the fist, and his body flashed and flew towards Zefa. Interesting, just what I want. Zefa looked at Luo's fist that cut through the air and muttered praise, but the movement of the hand was extremely simple, and he clenched his left fist and threw himself out without hesitation. Bang! In the next instant, the two fists, one large and one small, collided instantly, and an extremely terrifying energy shock wave erupted, causing the air to crack. And that's just the beginning. Rumble. 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 The roar of the sound continued to explode, accompanied by the explosion of the air, with Zefa and Luo Lei as the center, and a crack appeared on the ground that was visible to the naked eye. Nice, nice. Sure enough, I am a genius in my favor. Bang! Another deafening crashing sound. Zefa took 3 steps back. The gaze that looked at Lorelei was filled with shock and disbelief. He could remember 2 years ago, when Luo Lei first came to join him, he was a teenager without the power of a chicken. At that time, he was still recuperating on this desert island and conditioning his body, and when he heard that Luo Lei was a distant nephew, as a lonely man, he reluctantly took in Luo Lei and began to teach Luo Lei in boredom. Outcome? This teaching, he found a super genius rising in his hands. That's right, is a super genius. As a former admiral and former chief instructor of the Navy headquarters, he had also seen many geniuses, including the current 3 admirals of the Navy, the green pheasant, the yellow ape, and the red dog, all of whom were taught from his command. But compared to the talent of his nephew Luo, the talent of the pheasant, the yellow ape, and the red dog is the scum, and it cannot be compared with Luo Lei. In 2 years, he mastered the 6 styles of the Navy, armed color domineering, seeing and hearing color domineering, and even inexplicably awakening the overlord color domineering. And, I don't know when, there was another force in Luo's body. Just now, with the special strange power in his body, he was repelled. Nemas did not eat the demon fruit, but there was a force in his body that he had never seen before. Even the well-informed Zefa had some doubts and incomprehensions. Of course. That's all. Everyone has their own secrets. Zefa will not break the casserole to ask the end. Self-pleading is not interesting. Instead, he could only be happy and proud of the talent that Rayleigh had revealed. Right now, for Zefa's complex mind, of course, Luo Lei would not know, and even if he knew, he would only smile calmly. The strange power in his body, in fact, is nothing special. It is just an ordinary chakra. Just now he just used the strange power, combined with the armed color domineering, coupled with the blessing of chakra, to knock Zefa back with one punch. Ha ha ha, stinky boy, you are getting stronger and stronger, I can't suppress you. After a few seconds, Zefa laughed loudly, and the breath of his whole body converged as much as possible, and the huge iron arm crusher twisted a few times before subconsciously asking, "What, are you interested in joining the Navy? With your strength and accumulation of enough military merit, it will not take you a few years to be promoted to a substitute general of the Navy." When it comes to this, Zefa shook his head with some regret and said, "If you want to be promoted to a general, it will be impossible for the time being. After all, my 3 students." Somehow, thinking of this, Zefa looked at his huge iron arm shredder, and his eyes unconsciously flashed a cold feeling. 7 years. It's been 7 years. As a result, the Navy didn't just fail to catch the pirate that attacked him. He also implemented the so-called 7 Marshalseas system under the king, so that pirates were legalized, plunder was legalized, and all forces were legalized, and he did not know what the world government and the Navy wanted to do. Bang. When I think about it, Zefa couldn't bear to step down. The power of terror caused a crack in the ground that was visible to the naked eye. Episode 2. This. Look at the angry Zefa teacher. Both Ain and Benz looked a little bleak. As one of the proud students of teacher Zefa, the two know teacher Zefa quite well. The so-called 7 Marshalseas system under the Navy actually proves from the side that teacher Zefa has always been just as wrong. If Zefa is still an admiral, maybe his words still have some effect, but 7 years have passed since Mr. Zefa was injured and resigned as chief instructor of the Navy to recuperate on this desert island. 7 years? That's enough to change a lot of things. Cough cough. Maybe the mood swings are too severe. In the middle of the field, Zefa couldn't help but cough violently a few times, and his huge body trembled a few times. Not good. Teacher Zefa, what's wrong with you? Listening to the coughing sound of teacher Zefa, Ain and Benz finally reacted, and the huge worry and nervousness rushed up. It's all right, old problem. Zefa's eyes flashed a complex color. His physical condition, he couldn't have known it himself. Especially after the right arm was injured and the mechanical arm shredder was installed, the state of the body deteriorated. Phew. Seeing Zefa teacher waving his hand, he gestured. Both Ian and Benz were involuntarily relieved, revealing expressions of wanting to stop talking. Yet, for insurance purposes, the two still wanted teacher Zefa to take a break. Ha ha ha, I know what you're thinking, Ain, Benz. At this time, looking at Ain and Benz who wanted to stop talking, Zefa suddenly burst out laughing, and there was a hint of pampering in his eyes, and then he patted Benz's shoulder with his intact left hand. You two are my most proud students, rest assured, the teacher will not be so fragile. Sooner or later, one day, I will make the Navy and the world government regret it. When he said this, Zefa turned his eyes and looked at Luo Lei, who had never spoken, and said, consider it, join the Navy, and do a lot with me. After this sentence, do not wait for Luo Lei to answer. Zefa grinned, took a few steps, and walked toward the sea. Teacher Zefa, wait a minute. See this scene. Benz followed suit after reacting. As for Ain, with his big and bright eyes, he glared at Luo Lei fiercely and followed up. Girlish feelings are always poetry. Although she likes Luo Lei, she also wants to ask Luo Lei to help teacher Zefa, but I can't say it. Alas. Look at the long hair curled by the blue waves of the Alline Sea. Luo Lei's eyes moved, and he couldn't help but sigh a few times. He didn't know what teacher Zefa, uncle, meant, but as a crosser, he knew what kind of path Zefa would choose. In the original book, after Zefa's right arm was transformed into a robotic arm shredder equipped with sea floor stones, after a year or two, he formed a pirate guerrilla to hunt pirates, and Ain and Benz joined in. In the end, Edward Weibel, a pirate who cut off his arm and killed and injured many of his students, joined the Navy to become the king of the 7 Marshalseas, and began to have a strong sense of doubt and distrust within the Navy, and resolutely withdrew from the Navy to establish the Neo Navy with the purpose of annihilating pirates all over the world. At the age of 74, meet Luffy King, fierce battles ensued, and eventually the Navy was killed. After his death, he was buried on the island where Kuzan, one of the 3 generals, died in battle. No doubt, Zefa's life was tragic. Even in the end, he also sent a wave of experience to the future pirate Wang Lufei, which can be regarded as realizing the last bit of value. The pirate guerrillas, the Neo Navy, it seems like they're all pretty interesting, right? After a little thought, Luo Lei didn't bother to think about it so much. Anyway, strength is king. He didn't like to join the Navy, he didn't like pirates, maybe the pirate guerrillas could try to join. What's more, the good villain Zefa is also his teacher and uncle. If you can help, just help it. System, I'm going to look at the next Dome Properties panel. After half a ring, Luo Lei's heart moved, and he silently commanded, ding. The host's properties panel is being built, ding. Properties panel generated complete. Host, lore, age, 15 years old. Capabilities, Navy 6 style, proficient, see and smell color domineering, intermediate, armed color domineering, intermediate, overlord color domineering, elementary, 1000 hands column template, unlock 30%, random draws, 3 times, draw points, none. No doubt, he's still a crosser. 2 years ago, that is when you come to Zefa, a system called the Super Random Draw was activated. So far, every 6 months, the system rewards a chance to draw a random prize. In the first half year, using a random lottery of system rewards, Luo Lei drew the first generation of Naruto in the world of Naruto, the legendary ninja, and the character summoning card between the 1000 hands pillar. At that time, he was very happy. After all, this was a man who could match Uchiha Ban between the Thousand Hands Pillar. Yet, just when he wanted to summon the Thousand Hands Pillar, the system tells him that the character summoning card can not only be summoned, but also can choose fusion. Once fused is chosen, the character summoning card between the Thousand Hands Pillar will evolve into a character template between the Thousand Hand Pillars, allowing the host to unlock the inheritance. When the unlock is complete, the host will have the strength of the Thousand Hands Pillar at its peak. To this, Luo Lei was certainly overjoyed, immediately chose the character template of fusing between the Thousand Hands Pillars. Just kidding, strong yourself is really strong, just call it. After all, with the template between the Thousand Hands Pillar, at the very least, his talent and ability will have a transformation. Once the template between the Thousand Hands Pillar is unlocked, even in the pirate world, it can almost stand at the top. Episode 3. So, in the space of a year and a half, under Zefa's teaching, Luo Lei slowly unlocked the template between the Thousand Hand Pillars, while learning the 6 styles of the Navy, seeing and hearing the color domineering, armed color domineering. The two complement each other. Naturally, Luo Lei became a super genius in Zefa's eyes. At present, the Thousand Hands Pillar template has been unlocked to 30% by him, and Luo Lei already has a chakra that is almost equivalent to a shadow-level strongman, and has also learned strange powers and some wooden ninjutsu. Note, the immortal body has not been unlocked, so chakra suppressed some. As for the immortal body, immortal mode, immortal magic, for the time being, it has not been successfully unlocked. But Rao is so, Luo Lei's talent and ability have a quality leap. Anyway, I'm enough to protect myself now, and some of it is time. Roughly glanced at his properties panel, while when he saw that the lottery point was 0, the corners of Luo Lei's mouth still couldn't help but twitch a few times, and there was no lottery point, which meant that there was no way to draw the kryptonite gold random lottery. As for how the lottery points come about, according to the meaning of the system, it can be exchanged for something of value from the pirate world. And for the past 2 years Rolly has stayed on this desert island, nor did anything of value be found to redeem the raffle point. But soon, the essence of Luo Lei's eyes flashed, and he looked at the 3 random draws given by the system. 2 years. A total of 4 random draws were given to the system. He used his first chance, drew the template between the Thousand Hand columns, and now there are 3 opportunities left. System, give me a random draw. The next moment, Luo Lei did not hesitate much, and simply and neatly gave a command. Anyway, they are all free to send, and if they are smoked, they will be smoked, not to mention that for what good things can be drawn, Luo Lei is still looking forward to it. Bite. The voice has not fallen. In that translucent space that only Lori could see, a large roulette wheel appeared. On the roulette wheel, it is divided into dozens of small squares, all of which are question marks, and there are several small squares that are directly blank. The question mark means that what is drawn is random, and the blank indicates that nothing is drawn. After a few seconds, the hands of the roulette wheel began to spin rapidly. Ding. Nothing was drawn. As the pointer rested on the blank cell, the mechanical voice of the system also sounded in Lore's head. The system really mastered the core technology of the lottery. Listen to the system's prompts. A few black lines involuntarily appeared on Lore's forehead. Nima's, the pointer that could have advanced another block, turned out to be resting on the blank cell, causing him to draw nothing. I don't believe it yet, I can't smoke anything good. After hitting the wall at the beginning, Luo Lei frowned, thought for a moment, and then ordered, System, give me the remaining 2 random draws. Ding. Congratulations to the host, the Mushuan test subject was drawn. Ding. Congratulations to the host, drew the character summoning card One Punch Superman, Tong D. Yay. The system's prompt just dropped. Luo Lei couldn't help but wave his fist. These 2 random draws, sure enough, did not disappoint him. Needless to say, the Musui experimenter knew at a glance that it was something from the Naruto world, and as for the character summoning card Tong D, it was a character of the One Punch Superman world. A 10-year-old teenager, always carrying a school bag, holding a lollipop in his hand. Absolutely, don't look at Tong D as a child, but his strength is not weak at all. More precisely, Tong D's IQ is very high, good at researching and manufacturing high-tech products, and there are a lot of high-tech props in the bag behind him, and the physical strength is 1800, beyond the average hero. System, summon the Tong Emperor. A moment later, Luo Lei thought for a moment before quietly ordering. Now that he had the template between the Thousand Hands Pillar, there was no need to fuse the Tong Emperor anymore, and it was more in his interest to summon it. Laugh at. Accompanied by a sound of spatial fluctuations, only to see a teenager carrying a school bag and a lollipop appear in front of Lore, the host. After Emperor Tong appeared, a wisp of joy appeared on the childish cheeks, and he looked at Luo Lei very respectfully. There is no doubt that under the intervention of the system, Emperor Tong has his own independent thoughts, abilities, and strengths have not changed, but However, the memory was affected, and Luo Lei invisibly became the master of the Tang Emperor. Looking at the child emperor who looked like Lu Ban, the corners of Luo Lei's mouth slightly cocked, and he said softly, "After that, I will call you a small school bag." "No problem." Tong Di took the lollipop. It didn't matter to skim his lips, the small school bag was a small school bag. "Big deal later." He walks a little more arrogantly. System, extraction of the wooden subject. Since the Tang Emperor was summoned, Luo Lei frowned, simply did not do two things, and gave another order. He was very curious whether this so-called wooden experiment was a human experimental subject of the Naruto world, the great snake Maru who conducted the study of Mushu. Bang. After a few seconds, the sound of something falling to the ground sounded. I saw the body of a dead child fall on the ground directly in front of me. Grass. Look at the dead subjects. Luo Lei finally couldn't help but curse. The system of Dog Day is really disgusting. A living wooden subject, he can still accept. As a result, came a dead wooden subject. Moreover, it seems that this wooden subject has been dead for a long time. While hot. At the same moment, see the scene. Tong Di, who had been eating lollipops, had his eyes lit up, and before Luo Lei could react, he took a few steps forward and appeared next to the wooden subject. Quickly took out the scalpel and various experimental containers from the backpack. In front of Luo Lei's face, using his own skillful techniques, he began to dissect skillfully. The whole action was done in one go, and Luo Lei was stunned to see it. Episode 4, Reckless. Look at Emperor Tong's skillful technique. A few strands of black lines appeared on Lore's forehead unconsciously. This small school bag, sure enough, is a genius teenager with a very high IQ, facing a corpse, and actually quickly entered the role of a scientist. Yet, thinking that Tong Di is good at researching and manufacturing high-tech products, Luo Lei was also relieved, because in some ways, Emperor Tong was similar to the Great Snake Pill of the Naruto world and the Burgerpunk of the pirate world, all of whom were obsessed with scientific research. As for the high-tech achievements, Emperor Tong may have dumped the Great Snake Maru and Burgerpunk a few streets. "Master, it's done." After a few moments, Emperor Tong put away the experimental knife, held a vessel containing cells, and walked over with great excitement, saying, "I extracted some cells with strong vitality from that dead child." When it comes to this, Emperor Tong rarely showed a look of amazement. This cell is really incredible. It seems to be transplanted from a strong person, with super vitality and resilience. You can call him Wood Cell. Listen to this sentence. The corners of Luo Lei's mouth cocked slightly, and he subconsciously asked, "What are you going to do with this cell?" "All right." For the cells between the thousand-hand pillars extracted by Tong Di, Luo Lei was not surprised at all. Anyway, in the world of Naruto, the cells between the thousand hands pillar were very magical. Uchiha transplants the cells between the thousand-hand pillars and, when dying, awakens the Samsara Eye. He also used the cells between the thousand-hand pillars to cast the other half of Uchiha's body with soil. Shimura Tenzang is even more peculiar and strange. In order to balance the physical energy with the extremely strong spiritual energy of the 11 riding wheel eyes, he also transplanted the cells between the thousand-hand pillars. Wait a minute. Transplant cells between the thousand-hand pillars? The next moment, Luo Lei seemed to think of something, and a conjecture that could be implemented suddenly appeared in his mind, that is, to transplant the mechanical arm of teacher Zefa into a wooden arm. At this stage, Zefa teacher, the strength is seriously degraded. The so-called mechanical arm shredder, which looks very good, can also be used to deal with the ability of the person, in fact, is just a chicken rib. Once the wooden arm is transplanted, at the very least, the cells have strong vitality and resilience. You can also feed back teacher Zefa's body. After all, not everyone is like Kapu and Sengoku. The older the more demon, the more demon. More importantly, Mushua's arm is combined with the armed color domineering spirit of teacher Zefa, and there should be a windfall. Of course it's a scientific experiment. At this time, Tong Di's eyes lit up and he said with great interest, "I can combine these cells and robots to create more high-tech products. What about transplanting people?" Luo Lei thought for a moment, and asked with some curiosity, "Yes." Emperor Tong said confidently, "Master, you can rest assured, if I shoot, there will be absolutely no side effects. Where do you want to transplant the Mushin cells? As long as you open your mouth, I can do it." After this sentence, Emperor Tong's gaze naturally looked down at Luo Lei, revealing a thoughtful look. The owner is really good? Even this can be imagined. If there is a transplant of Muyu cells there, I am afraid that the combat effectiveness will be multiplied. Clang. Looking at Emperor Tong's gaze, Luo Lei didn't know what he was thinking. Without saying a word, a fist hit Emperor Tong's head. Especially, is he such a superficial person? Ah. Perceiving a large bag appearing on the head, Emperor Tong screamed bitterly, and the small hand holding the lollipop trembled a few times, and a small face was full of grievances. "Man, little devil is big." Luo Lei looked at Emperor Tong disdainfully and said softly, "Master, Do I need a transplant? You really underestimate the host. Airplanes. After saying that, accompanied by a wave of wooden chakra fluctuations, above Rowley's right hand, a wisp of purple chakra appeared. This is? In the face of this life-filled chakra, Emperor Tong's eyes narrowed. The mouth that was originally eating the lollipop couldn't help but stop. Mu Xian cells. Actually, the master's whole body was Mu Xian cells? In an instant, the lollipop in Emperor Tong's hand is not fragrant. Looking at Luo Lei's gaze, it is like looking at what vault Niam is. If the master studies it, then my scientific research has a new breakthrough. Don't be delusional. It seemed to see Emperor Tong's thoughts. Luo Lei took a deep breath and said softly, you should still study the wooden cells in your hands. Just kidding. Let someone else study your own cells. He didn't have that kind of habit. Let Emperor Tong study the cells between the thousand hands pillars. Okay. Emperor Tong reacted and smiled sadly. That's right. The next moment, Luo Lei still had some uncertain reminders. Are you sure you can give people a side effect-free transplant of wooden cells? Master, you cannot doubt my ability. As soon as he heard this sentence, Tong Di was immediately anxious, defending, as a genius, I can handle this small operation of transplanting cells in a few minutes. As for the side effects, it is even simpler, a drug I have researched, which can perfectly fuse two kinds of cells without rejection. Good. Luo Lei nodded with satisfaction. For Emperor Tong's words, he still believed it very much. After all, in the world of One Punch Superman, Tong Di can develop a lot of high-tech props, and transplanting Mu Yun cells to people should be a breeze. At the very least, should be more reliable than the Great Snake Maru. Episode 5, No Wind Band. This desert island is on the eastern coast. A medium-sized naval warship was standing there. In the past 2 years, Zefa, Lore, Ian, and Binz have all lived on the warship, and as for the supplies, it was Ein who took the time to procure them. As for why not choose a business island to recuperate? In Zefa's words, there are many people, and he was beaten so badly by the sea thief Edward Wibble. The students were killed, only Binz and Ein, and the arm was also destroyed, and he really could not afford to lose that person. Another reason was that he needed a quiet environment to teach his nephew, Lore. At this time, warship on deck, when Luo Lei appeared with the Tong Emperor, whether it was Zefa or Ein, Binz was a little confused. In particular, in just a few hours, Lori brought back a 10-year-old child with a school bag, which was too fast, right? Not true, not even women. Even if it is fast, it is useless? Of course, Zefa, Ein, and Binz didn't break the casserole to ask to the end. After all, everyone has secrets. In 2 years, the three of them already knew that Luo Lei, not as simple as it seemed, at the very least, talent and ability, is a first-class bull. Wow. What a cute little school bag. After not bothering where Emperor Tong jumped out, Ein took the lead in reacting, and a few steps forward wanted to pinch Emperor Tong's cheek. Protective umbrella. Clang. In the next instant, with a crashing sound, Emperor Tong's right hand opened an umbrella with a protective shield and kept Ein alive. This is... Seeing this scene, Zefa, who was originally drinking tea in yuzu, narrowed his eyes, as if he had seen something incredible. Is it actually an energy shield? Binz had a look of disbelief on his cheeks. A little kid, a protective cover at hand? Are today's children so perverted? Protective cover? Ein's look was a little stiff, and he could only look at Luo Lei with a doubtful look, expressing a very simple meaning. This small school bag, where did you find the strange thing? His name is Emperor Tong, he said. Luo Lei saw this, shook his head with a chuckle, and added, you can call him Xiao Shubao, a scientist with a very high IQ. Scientist? The voice has not fallen. Zefa, Binz, and Ein all had some abnormal looks, obviously some disbelief. Just kidding. Aren't scientists all old men like Vegapunk? Or an older guy? This little school bag in front of you, no, Tong Di, is about 10 years old at best, right? 10-year-old scientist, aren't you kidding? In the face of the questioning eyes of Zefa and others, the corner of Emperor Tong's mouth was slightly cocked, and he snorted disapprovingly, took his school bag, took out a pencil case casually, and said softly, this is a pencil missile. This is the disturbing barrier. This is the energy lightsaber. This is a RC tank. This is a rabid dog, a 3-headed dog that beats hell. This is a tracking bullet. Quiet. A dead silence. Suddenly, there was some silence on the deck, except for Lore, Zefa, Ein, and Binz. All gradually became dignified, and their eyes were filled with extreme shock. Nima's, inside a small school bag, can he actually come up with so many high-tech weapons? Is this Tong Di really a scientist? Wouldn't it be some kind of warmonger? In particular, there are some weapons, even Zefa is still the first time to see it, it is simply an eye-opener. This is the fearless giant. Yet, it was at this time that Emperor Tong seemed to have gotten something, looked happy, his legs moved, and a catapult flew into the air. Fit. Rumble. A loud roar rang out. When Zefa, Ian, and Binz reacted, a giant mech giant levitated in midair, and Emperor Tong appeared in the cockpit of the dauntless giant. This? Not a pacifist? No. It seems to be much more advanced than the pacifists. Bang. When the dauntless giant appeared, Zefa could no longer maintain the composure he deserved, and stood up from his chair and looked at the fearless giant with a look of surprise. Originally, the scientists of the Navy headquarters were transforming his right arm into a shredder equipped with a mechanical arm of Heilushi. He knew the Navy was secretly researching humanoid weapons, also named what pacifist it was. To this, Zefa still laughed dismissively. Peace is about strength, not robots, and the world government and Navy are putting the cart before the horse. Now Emperor Tong's mech giant has opened Zefa's eyes, and what is even more creepy is that this Emperor Tong seems to have developed a mech several levels higher than the humanoid weapon. For a time, Zefa knew that what his nephew Luo Lei had said was true. This little ghost named Tong Di is definitely a scientist, and may not be inferior to the scientist Burgerpunk, who is known as surpassing human intelligence for 500 years. Okay, down. At this time, Luo Lei, who had never spoken all along, gestured at the Tong Emperor in midair. In fact, when seeing the fearless giant, it was also a bright eye, since Emperor Tong could even make such a huge mech, then, the mech in the Pacific Rim should also be able to make it, right? When the time comes, he provided some ideas that could make Emperor Tong give it a try. If you can get the mech in the Pacific Rim out, the sea will be more lively. Episode 6. Yes, Master. Seeing myself behaving almost as well, after a few jumps, Emperor Tong jumped out of the cockpit of the dauntless giant and stood on the deck very smoothly. Immediately afterward, under the stunned gaze of Zefa, Ein, and Binz, the slow-witted high-tech weapons such as the dauntless giant, the disturbing barrier, the energy lightsaber, and the tracking bullet were received in the bag. Gollum. See this scene. Binz couldn't help but swallow. Looking at Emperor Tong's gaze was like looking at a monster. Nemas, who could have imagined that this little bag actually contained the laws of space? Another pervert. Ein blinked, and the shocked skimmed his lips. Awesome. Not far away, Zefa on the deck glanced at Emperor Tong, and then at his nephew Luo Lei, and he couldn't help but feel a little old in his heart. Teacher Zefa, how is your robotic arm shredder used? Yet, this time, Luo Lei didn't care so much, took a few steps forward, and took the initiative to change the topic. This thing? Listening to this sentence, Zefa turned his eyes and looked at the mechanical arm shredder on his right arm, looking a little dark, said, mechanical arm shredder seems to be bullish, in fact, I use it very unsmoothly, after all, I'm old. After saying that, Zefa couldn't help but sigh. When he was young, he was, but it is called Black Wrist Zefa. Now that people are old, the right arm has been abolished, although the mechanical arm shredder is installed, but he didn't know how long he could hold out. Then disassemble the robotic arm shredder. Luo Lei grinned and said pointedly, I asked Emperor Tong to transplant you a brand new bullish arm. Forget it. Hearing these words, Zefa's eyes lit up first, and then he smiled bitterly, waved his arm, and said, the mechanical arm crusher is equipped with sea floor stones, and I can use it to deal with some demon fruit abilities. Rest assured that I will let Emperor Tong give you the transplanted arm and will not disappoint you. Between words, Luo Lei also turned his head and winked at Emperor Tong. Teacher Zefa, your robotic arm shredder is really too low. You give me an hour, I will not only transplant you a new arm, but also get you a high-tech boxing set. Emperor Tong carried his school bag, while eating lollipops, while confidently adding, I extracted the sea floor stone and integrated it into the boxing set, which absolutely made it refreshing. So? Listen to this sentence. Zefa had some hesitation at once. Emperor Tong's ability, he had seen it. Luo Lei's nephew would certainly not harm him. If he could really transplant a special arm, it seemed that he could do it. Teacher, transplant a new arm. This robotic arm shredder is too much of a burden on your body. The next moment, Binz and Ein looked at each other, or took the initiative to persuade them. The two have long been very unhappy to see the mechanical arm shredder. It is not only large, very heavy, but also often has some side effects. Now that there is his own person, Tong Di, to operate on Teacher Zefa, it is definitely more reliable than the scientists of the Navy. Alright. Seeing that Luo, Ein, and Binz had all said this, Zefa was not presumptuous, took a deep breath, and nodded his head crisply. Yes. See, Zefa agrees. Emperor Tong seemed to have been prepared earlier, and casually took out something from his backpack. Bang. A piercing crashing sound sounded. Immediately after, under the sluggish gaze of Ian and Binz, a very high-tech small laboratory stands on the deck. Teacher Zefa, let's go. After the laboratory appeared, Emperor Tong carried his small school bag and took the lead in entering. Just kidding. A good scientist. His high-tech lab is carried with him. Zefa looked unchanged, took a few steps forward, and followed Emperor Tong into the laboratory. Luo Lei, after transplanting the new arm, Teacher Zefa's strength will not be affected, right? After Zefa and Tong Di entered the laboratory, Ein, dressed in a blue cloak, stepped on black pointed heels and took a few steps forward. Rest assured, Luo Lei hugged his chest with both hands, the corners of his mouth slightly cocked, and said, not only will it not be affected, but there will be a certain degree of enhancement in strength. Really? A twinkle of joy flashed in Ein's eyes. Really? Luo Lei nodded indifferently. What else can I say? Zefa was originally a strong physicist. After transplanting Muyu's arm, it will definitely benefit a lot. As long as it is used well, there may be a leap in physical skills. Then will you join the Navy? Not far away, Binz hesitated for a moment, and then couldn't help but ask. How? Listen to this sentence. Luo Lei looked at Ein and chuckled. Is Teacher Mafa Zefa going back to the Navy headquarters? These days, both Zefa and Ein are asking if he wants to join the Navy. Obviously problematic. That's right. Ein's chin lifted slightly, revealing a hint of determination. It has been almost 7 years since Teacher Zefa left the Navy headquarters. Whether it is people walking in tea or being subconsciously hidden by the Navy, we must go back and get back what belongs to us. Alas. Bin sighed and said, you are not unaware of Teacher Zefa's temper, and what the Navy has done has gone off the right track, especially the so-called 7 Marshal Seas system under the king. Actually, a year ago, we wanted to go back to the Navy headquarters, but Teacher Zefa is worried about you, and he wants you to grow up and leave. The words are not finished, but Luo Lei understood at once. In the end, Teacher Zefa's love for the Navy was gone. If the guess is correct, this time back to Zefa Teacher will have a showdown with the top brass of the Navy and form a pirate guerrilla team. Episode 7. If the guess is correct, this time back to Zefa Teacher will have a showdown with the top brass of the Navy and form a pirate guerrilla team. Once the pirate guerrillas are formed, and the Navy will involve the distribution and contention of some interests. At that time, Teacher Zefa and the top brass of the Navy will definitely have a war of words. I want to go to the Navy headquarters and play. After thinking about it for a while, Luo Lei couldn't help but stretch his waist and look at the sea in the distance. Special. In this place where birds don't poop obscene development for 2 years. It's time for him to be born too. What's more, to unlock the character template between the Thousand Hands pillar, it is necessary to fight continuously. To get the chance of a random draw, he also needs to collect something of value and redeem it for a lottery point. Yeah, you said yes? The voice has not fallen. Binz reacted first, and couldn't help but wave his fist. Although he didn't know how strong Luo Lei's strength really was, but following Teacher Zefa back to the Navy headquarters will definitely give Teacher Zefa more chips. Haha. Ein's face was happy, her eyes blinked, and she said, sure enough, I am worthy of the man I have a crush on. Is it? Lore glanced at Ein and said, do you have time? At night we go hiking. You rogue. Ein was stunned at first, and then as if thinking of something, he covered his face with his hands and ran away with a flushed face. Sample, fight with me. Looking at the back of Ian's departure, Luo Lei skimmed his lips in disbelief. For Ian's little trick, he had already seen through it. It's a big deal to go climb the mountain. Awesome. Binz walked away with a look of amazement, obviously amazed by Lore's means. After all, Ian is not a fuel-saving lamp. The result? This tigress, in front of Lore, is like a kitten. An hour later, Lore was bored drinking a little wine on the deck, and Ein was sitting next to him muttering a small mouth, a look of displeasure, obviously sulking. Binz practiced his sword there. Clang. In vain. It was at this time that, with the sound of an open door, only to see that the door of Tong Di's high-tech laboratory was opened. Subsequently, Tong Di, who was carrying a small school bag, ate a lollipop, took the lead and made an okay gesture to Luo Lei, expressing a simple meaning. Everything is done, the operation is perfect. Immediately after, Zefa, who was tall and mighty, also walked out of the laboratory door. Unlike when he went in, the mechanical arm shredder on Zefa's right arm has disappeared and is replaced by an intact wooden arm with a black fist sleeve on it. More importantly, in terms of temperament, Teacher Zefa has also changed and seems to be full of self-confidence. At this time, just walked out of the lab door, Zefa seemed to be in a good mood, and was about to say something, when the next moment, his expression was slightly frightened, and he turned his head to look in the direction where the sea was. Huh? See this scene. Lore, Ein, and Binz also subconsciously looked at the sea, as far as they could see, but did not see anything. But immediately after, Lore, Ein, and Binz each urged their own sight and smell domineering, and immediately knew what Teacher Zefa had perceived. It turned out that not far below the surface of the sea, it seemed that 2 giant sea kings were fighting. For the Neptune, the 3 are not strangers. After all, in the windless zone, the Neptune is the most numerous creature, besides the seawater. Boom. Sure enough, after a few seconds, not far from the sea, a deafening sound suddenly sounded. Two gigantic sea kings, with a vicious face, emerged from the bottom of the sea, set off terrifying waves, and swept out in all directions. Aquaman? Two Neptunes fighting, interesting. Watch the appearance of two sea kings. Both Ian and Bins involuntarily showed disapproval, just so you can experiment with a new arm. Zefa stared at the two sea kings in the distance, and with his right hand clenched, a strange breath suddenly circled around and covered the black fist cover of Mu Yuan's arm. Not only that, the appearance of armed color domineering, it seemed to stimulate Mu Yuan's arm, and a breath full of life began to spread out. Cool. Perceiving the change in his right arm, Zefa, who was in a comfortable mood, seemed to be 10 years younger, and his body stepped out in vain. So, the next instant, only to see Zefa performing the moon step, a few flashes came to the sky above the two sea kings. From a distance, Zefa's body is like a fly compared to the bodies of the two sea kings, but when Zefa Yun lightly punched one of the sea kings, the situation changed in an instant. Rumble. The air exploded in an instant. That sea king hadn't reacted yet. It was slammed into the bottom of the sea by the huge fist. Suddenly, a huge groove appeared on the surface of the sea, and the terrifying power also set off terrifying waves, causing the sea to swell up. And that's just the beginning. After bombarding a sea king, Zefa's body flashed, and when the other sea king was still in a state of confusion, another punch hit the head of the sea king class. Bang. A soft noise sounded. The body of the giant sea king was as if it had been attacked by some force, and it shattered in an instant, and the blue blood mixed with white brain water sprayed out. 3 seconds. Two Neptunes were killed in a second. Perhaps these two giant sea kings did not expect that they would be so sad that they would emerge from the sea and meet Zefa, who had just transplanted Mu Xian's arm. Episode 8. Whoops. The sea is still about of rough waves. Zefa's body had somehow returned to the deck. A moment later, the sea in front of it gradually calmed down. I seem to have seen the former Zefa teacher. The giant sea king class, killed by a punch, and the transplanted arm of teacher Zefa is also too unbelievable. And Ian and Bins did not know when. They had already stood up, almost with a shocked look on their faces, obviously did not expect that teacher Zefa who transplanted a new arm would be so terrible. Emperor Tong, there is yours. Luo Lei's eyes turned, and he gave a thumbs up to Emperor Tong. No doubt, Mu Shua's arm transplant was so perfect, there was no antiphagocytosis method, 70% of it was the credit of Emperor Tong. You know, even a strong person like Ban or even a foreign golem will appear between the columns in the part where the cells between the columns are transplanted. This is because even after the death of the pillar, his cells are still alive and aggressive, but they are not conscious. Now Zefa has not been regurgitated, which proves that the Mushuan cells are controlled within a certain range, and they will not be antiphagocytosis, but can be used by Zefa. Little meaning. Emperor Tong took the lollipop and ate it beautifully. Cool. It's so cool. At this time, Zefa on the deck looked at his transplanted wooden arm and couldn't help but laugh wildly. He hadn't been so cool for a long time, and the transplanted wooden arm was really perfect, and the terrifying vitality contained in it made Zefa's body feel comfortable. Alright. Zefa wouldn't know, people who have intercolumn cells can also improve their healing ability and prolong their life. Lore, thank you. I don't know how long it took. Zefa Kai sighed and said, I haven't been so comfortable for a long time, and the recovery of my right arm has made me feel like I'm back to the top, is it? Luo Lei grinned and said, next, what is teacher Zefa going to do? Of course it's back to the Navy headquarters. Zefa clenched his fists, his eyes sank, and said in a deep voice, I'm going to get back everything I've lost. Alright. Luo Lei smiled indifferently and said, just bored, I will also follow you to the Navy headquarters. You. Listen to this sentence. Zefa took a rare moment, and then he laughed uncontrollably. Ha ha ha, I knew that your boy would not stand idly by. To tell you the truth, this time I will go back and form a pirate guerrilla group. Aren't the world governments and navies trying to legitimize some of the sea thieves? Then I'm going to punch them in the face. At this point, perhaps Zefa did not find out. His eyes were a little moist, maybe because his right arm had recovered, maybe because Lorelei's nephew had joined, or maybe because the Navy had disappointed him too much. A few days later, Naval Headquarters, Marin Fando. Looking far away, a huge fortress stands there. On the front, there are two words Navy inscribed on it, one left and one right, and in the center is the symbol of the Navy, which is a seagull motif. At the top of the naval fortress are the offices of the top brass of the Navy. At the moment, inside the Admiral's office, what? Marshal Sengoku is sitting there processing the documents. Suddenly, as if seeing something, he couldn't help but exhale, causing the seagulls on his head to fly out in fear. What's wrong? Directly ahead, the naval hero Kapu was eating a snack while clasping his nostrils with his little thumb. Is there any action for the 4 emperors of the New World? Nothing. Sengoku rubbed his head with some headache and said, Zefa sent a message that he is in good health, and in just a few days, he will come to the Navy headquarters. Zefa? Kapu sat down on the couch with a lazy look on his face and said, come back? Anyway, the Navy's chief instructor was still empty, and he came back just in time to continue cultivating new forces for the Navy. Carp, don't pretend to be stupid. The Warring States folded his arms in front of him and said in a deep voice, the sea thief who attacked Zefa at the beginning, our Navy did not catch it. The implementation of the 7 Martial Seas system. Zefa will definitely complain, this time back. He wants the Navy to support him to form a pirate guerrilla team. Pirate guerrillas? Kapu's expression suddenly became serious, and he subconsciously said, is his body still clinging? At such an old age, is it not fragrant to retire? Moreover, the world government has supported the legalization of some sea thieves, and what pirate guerrilla groups have been formed. The previous sentence, the tone is okay. The last sentence, the tone has some ironic meaning. Alright. If it was someone else, dare to say so, it would have been reprimanded by the Warring States a long time ago, but this is the hero of the Navy, Kapu. Even if the Warring States have some displeasure, they can only shake their heads helplessly, and at most reprimand. The next moment, Carp popped out a snot with his little thumb and said, Zefa is going to form a pirate guerrilla, what do you think? Of course not. Sengoku glanced at Kapu and said in a cold voice, the duty of the Navy is to uphold justice and fight against pirates, and he formed the pirate guerrilla team, didn't he punch our Navy in the face? Huh. Cap took the fairy shell, ate a few bites, and didn't bother to say anything. Does the Navy's face still need to be punched? When the so-called 7 Martial Seas system was implemented, the Navy's face was gone, and now Zefa is just uncovering the scars. Yet, thinking of Zefa's physical condition, Kapu could only sigh helplessly. When he was young, Zefa fought too hard, resulting in a serious physical overdraft, coupled with the fact that his right arm was destroyed by the sea thief. To be honest, he was not very optimistic about Zefa forming a pirate guerrilla team. Episode 9. When he was young, Zefa fought too hard, resulting in a serious physical overdraft, coupled with the fact that his right arm was destroyed by the sea thief. To be honest, he was not very optimistic about Zefa forming a pirate guerrilla team. Absolutely, not optimistic, but for Zefa's persistence and perseverance, Kapu is still very optimistic. There is no way, at this stage of the world government, is there some arrogance and unscrupulousness. Zefa set up a pirate guerrilla, there will still be a positive side, so, for this matter, Carp is in agreement. Forget it, wait until Zefa arrives. Looking at the uncertain Kapu, Sengoku rubbed his temples with some helplessness, ready to continue sorting out the documents. Pity, it was at this time that, only to see Staff Sergeant Crane suddenly push the door in, and said with some surprise, Marshal of the Warring States, I just got the news that Zefa's ship has passed through the Gate of Justice. What? So fast? Sengoku and Kapu couldn't help but glance at each other. They were just talking about Zefa, and as a result, Zefa was already at the naval headquarters. Little Crane, pass on the order and let all the navies perform their duties. The next moment, the Warring States seemed to think of something, and a sharp color appeared in his eyes, and he gave a deep command. Aren't you going to form a pirate guerrilla? Then I will let you know that after 7 years, the Navy is no longer the Navy it used to be, and you are not the black wrist Zefa of the original. Now you are only suitable for the elderly. Hear the words of the Sengoku. Staff Sergeant Crane immediately showed a somewhat reluctant look. Is it necessary? He also made outstanding contributions to the Navy. It is necessary. Sengoku nodded very firmly and said solemnly, many things are not something we can decide, but at the very least, come up with an attitude. Okay. Staff Sergeant Crane shook his head helplessly. Despite a look of reluctance, he finally walked out of the Sengoku's office and delivered orders. Why bother? Kapu took a bite of shanbei and said, you gave Zefa a dismount, there are some superfluous moves, and besides, our Navy, our world government, owe him too much. Sengoku snorted coldly, didn't say anything more, bowed his head and began to process the file. Alas! Carp sighed and opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he didn't say anything. As a friend and colleague of the Warring States, he knew the temper of the Warring States and the fact that the Warring States carried out the justice of the King's Landing, and from a young age, he firmly believed in the orders of the government, and climbed to the current position of Marshal because of the reliable completion of the task. At the same time, after half an hour, the whole naval headquarters knew that Zefa was going back to the naval headquarters. At the beginning, many of the students who had been taught by Zefa were still very excited and planned to go to the dock to meet teacher Zefa. After all, they had not seen him for so many years. Pity. An order from Staff Officer Crane made countless Zefa students a little stunned and puzzled. As for the content of the statement, it is impressive that the various navies of the Navy headquarters must perform their respective duties, and whoever dares to leave their posts without permission will be dealt with by military law. This is a bit embarrassing. Affected by this, only some middle and high-level members of the Navy realized in hindsight that Zefa returned to the Navy headquarters this time, and it seemed that it was not so simple. And at the highest level of the Naval Headquarters Fortress, the office of the Yellow Ape, one of the three generals. It's horrible. Huang Ape sat on the office chair, cocked the Erlang God, took a slow sip of tea, and then muttered lazily, "Teacher Zefa, you are all ruined, don't stop a little. This time as a student, I can only watch the play." When saying this, the Yellow Ape also deliberately lengthened the tone, appearing very obscene. As one of Zefa's students, Huang Ape has always been looked down upon by Zefa teacher, so for Zefa, Huang Ape has no good feelings. No way, he has always been a more casual personality, like to work from 9 to 5, on time, just this is what Zefa can't tolerate. In the words of Zefa teacher, he is not worthy of being an admiral. The other side, also one of the three admirals of the Navy, the office of the Red Inu. "Teacher Zefa, you are still the same." Red Dog's face was very gloomy, and he said in a deep voice, "The 7 Marshall Seas system has been implemented, what is the use of you coming back? As for forming a pirate guerrilla, with your physical condition, it is no longer possible." Come to think of it, the Red Dog also showed a rare look of disdain, and did not intend to go to the dock to meet teacher Zefa. Even though Zefa was his teacher, but he still decided to obey the orders of the Sengoku Marshal. Alright. Maybe the Red Dog didn't even perceive, in a sense, he inherited Zefa's fierceness and loyalty, and took loyalty to the extreme. As for the office of the last general, the Green Pheasant, click. Click. Accompanied by the sound of freezing, I saw that the table that the pheasant was holding with both hands had become an ice sculpture, causing the temperature of the office to drop by more than 10 degrees. What bullshit, each performs its duties. The Green Pheasant looked uncertain, muttering to himself, "Teacher Zefa is back, I will definitely go to greet you." For Zefa teacher, the pheasant's feelings are undoubtedly much more complicated, because in a sense, he is the most proud student of Zefa teacher, inheriting Zefa's unruliness and persistence. However, what the pheasant doesn't know is that both he and Zefa eventually parted ways with the Navy. Episode 10. At the same time, a medium-sized warship of the Navy passed through the gates of justice unimpeded. I was speeding toward the naval headquarters. On deck, Luo Lei was wearing a black coat, his silver hair fluttering in the wind, but as for his hands, they were constantly nodding. That's right, it's in the seal, and seeing this scene, whether it is Zefa or Ein, Binz is very conscious of not disturbing lore. After leaving the desert island in the windless belt, Luo Lei entered the lonely cultivation again, and even Zefa had some helplessness about this. No way, this disciple of his was simply a cultivation maniac, although I don't know why Lori practiced some strange knot gestures, but somehow, every time he looked at Luo Lei's seal, he felt that the speed of Luo Lei's seal seemed to become faster. Only Emperor Tong, a look that doesn't matter. I was looking at some newspapers with great curiosity and wanted to learn about the world of pirates through the newspapers. 5991 5992 5993 5998 5999 6000. Ding. Congratulations to the host, completed the daily task, 6,000 seals, bonus, 0.05% experience. Ding. Fusion of the 1,000 hands column template, unlocked to 31%. Phew. Listening to the prompts in his head, Luo Lei couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, which made him shake off some sore hands, which was finally unlocked to 31%. Accordingly, in the spiritual world of lore, a young man wearing a black tight combat uniform, with a red stacked armor on the outside, and the folded armor on the left shoulder was tattooed with the symbol of the 1,000 hands. The breath on his body suddenly changed, and his hands were quickly sealed. Birth of the Tree Realm. Rumble. A terrifying chakra swept out. Affected by this, countless large trees grew rapidly from the area where the young man was located, creating a lush forest in an instant. And that's just the beginning. Mushua Shu Hai descends. Mushu Shu Tai forever burial. The art of wooden people. The art of multiple wood splits. A series of dazzling wooden ninjutsu were unleashed from the young man's hands, erupting into extremely terrifying power fluctuations, and the scene was once very shocking and made people's scalps tingle. 1 minute. 10 minutes. 30 minutes. After half an hour, Luo Lei finally accepted this series of wooden ninjutsu, and his spirit returned to reality. Airplanes. In the instant you open your eyes, a palpitating breath flashed from Lore's body, stronger again. Feel this breath. The corners of Zefa's mouth, which was drinking, twitched involuntarily. In particular, people are more angry than people, and if he is not mistaken, the strength of his nephew Luo Lei has increased again. This? Not far away, Align and Ben's, but it showed a somewhat numb look. Obviously, for the talent of Luo Lei's evil demon, he had already adapted. Sure enough, it is 1,000 hands between the pillars. At this time, Luo Lei unconsciously showed a look of amazement and couldn't help but sigh. It wasn't the first time he had fused the template between the 1,000 hands pillars, but each time, he felt like he had achieved a transformation from the soul level. This time, he doesn't just fuse all kinds of wooden ninjutsu, even some of the experiences and insights of the 1,000 hands pillar about the wooden ninjutsu were all fused. The only pity is, the immortal body still hasn't unlocked the fusion. Once the immortal body is fused, then his chakra basically has no need to worry. Forget it, today's cultivation will end for the time being. After a few seconds, Luo Lei shook his head sadly. Anyway, every time he completes the system's daily tasks, he can unlock the template between the fusion 1,000 hand pillars, so take your time, he has time. Oh, and it can also be unlocked through battle. The next moment, Luo Lei seemed to think of something, and a thick sense of war flashed in his eyes. The Navy headquarters is coming. Suddenly, at this moment, Ein stood on the deck, his eyes turned, and looked at the huge fortress that loomed on the surface of the sea in the distance, and said a solemn word. Have you arrived? The voice has not fallen. Zefa, Benz, Tong Di, and Luo Lei all looked away. All right. Look around. A solemn, majestic fortress stands above the sea. Even if it was still a little far away, you could feel the invisible sense of oppression and suffocation emanating from the fortress. No doubt, this is the naval headquarters, Malin Van Du. It's finally coming. After half a ring, Zefa took a deep look at the naval headquarters before sighing. After all, it is back to the place where justice began. The atmosphere seems to be a little wrong. Hearing this, Luo Lei took a few steps forward and said pointedly, the Navy does not seem to welcome Teacher Zefa? The voice has not fallen. Zefa's face darkened at once. Even if it was Ein, Binza's look was a little ugly. Just kidding, they are not without sight and domineering. With a little scrutiny, I knew that there was not a navy on the dock of the Half Moon Harbor directly in front of the fortress. Yes, not a navy. This is undoubtedly very abnormal, because, a few days ago, they had already sent a message to the Navy that Teacher Zefa was returning, and besides, they had passed through the gate of justice with dignity, and the Navy must have known it. The only explanation is, the top brass of the Navy wants to give Teacher Zefa a dismount, otherwise, with Teacher Zefa's influence in the Navy, there will not be no Navy to greet him. It's too much to deceive. Bang. Accompanied by the sound of stomping feet, a wisp of anger appeared on Emperor Tong's childish cheeks, and he said, Teacher Zefa, the Navy is not giving us face. Through the newspapers of these days, he already knows the general situation of the pirate world, and also knows the embarrassing situation of Zefa, but the Navy's face that satisfied them still made Emperor Tong very unhappy. That's right, just trying to punch me in the face. Zefa took a deep breath, obviously a little angry, and said crisply, Luo Lei, you took the place of the teacher to teach the Navy a lesson. Just I want to see your real strength. Okay. Luo Lei shrugged, and there wasn't much fluctuation in his gaze. Anyway, he also wanted to see what it was like to perform the wooden retreat tree realm birth at the Navy headquarters.